Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're looking at the global situation as of April 2026. Now, at first glance, it all just looks like chaos. But what if I told you it's actually a carefully managed, high-stakes chess game? Well, today we're going to break down the rules of that game.
So, first up, you've got this conflict just blowing up in the Middle East. It's all centered on Iran, where U.S. and Israeli airstrikes have lit a fuse on a crisis that's threatening to cut off the world's oil supply.
And while all that is happening, the US and China are fighting this silent but absolutely brutal battle over the resources that power our future. We're talking about everything from the rare earth minerals in your smartphone to the chips in our most advanced military tech.
And then, all the way on the other side of the world, a top Taiwanese politician makes this high-stakes visit to mainland China. It's a move that's sending shockwaves through the very delicate balance of power in the Taiwan Strait.
So you've got a war, a trade dispute, a political power play. Are these just random fires breaking out all over the place? Or are they actually connected moves in a much, much bigger game between the world's two superpowers? Okay, let's dive into this.
The analysis we're looking at lays out this really fascinating way to understand the puzzle. We're going to walk through what it calls a three-tiered game board to see how each of these conflicts is actually a bargaining chip for all the others. All right, so first things first, we've got to wrap our heads around the central idea from this analysis, a concept it calls the three-tiered structure. So, the idea here is that this isn't just a series of unfortunate events. The model suggests that the fire in the Middle East, the fight over tech, and the political games around Taiwan are all part of one single massive negotiation. Each crisis is basically a tool, either created or managed, to put pressure on the other side.
So how does this actually work? Let's break down the first tier, the military conflict in the Middle East, and see how it's being used as this incredibly powerful form of economic leverage.
I mean, it is just incredible how quickly this all escalated. In a little over 6 weeks, we went from the first airstrikes to peace talks completely collapsing, and then boom, almost overnight, a full-blown U.S. naval blockade of the single most important oil choke point on the entire planet.
Now, the thing that really kicked off that blockade was this wild move by Iran. They tried to charge a $2 million transit fee for every single ship passing through. Essentially, Tehran tried to turn a global waterway into its own personal ATM. The U.S. called it global extortion and just shut the whole thing down.
And this is where you can see who the real target is. This was never just about Iran. The blockade is a massive pressure test on China, which depends on this one tiny strait for almost half of its crude oil. The U.S. is squeezing Iran to put a strategic chokehold on Beijing.
But, China wasn't just going to sit there and take this punch. As the U.S. supplied pressure on the energy front, China hit back on another, weaponizing its own control over critical global supply chains. And that brings us to Tier 2.
So what you get is this really terrifying balance of power, right? On one side, the U.S. has its hand on the global energy tap. But on the other, China controls the raw materials for just about every piece of technology that runs our modern world, from green energy all the way to advanced weapons.
And the way the analysis we're looking at puts it, well, it's pretty stark. By weaponizing its control over these rare earth minerals, Beijing has basically given itself veto power over the production of everything from F-35 fighter jets to the entire global supply of electric vehicles.
Now check out the surgical precision of China's countermove. This policy, called Announcement 61, wasn't just some blanket ban. It was a really sophisticated licensing system. Look at that de minimis rule. Any product with even a tiny, tiny fraction of Chinese rare earths now needs an export license. That gives Beijing a say over the entire EV and wind turbine supply chains. It's a masterful piece of economic warfare.
Okay, so you've got the U.S. applying military pressure in the Middle East, China hitting back with economic pressure on tech. So what's next? Well, with those two tiers heating up, Beijing opens up a third front to get even more leverage, the political chessboard of Taiwan.
Now, this visit to the mainland was just some simple diplomatic trip. The timing here is everything. It happened at the exact moment the Iran peace talks were falling apart. This was a carefully planned move designed to send a whole bunch of messages at once, to show Taiwan that there's another path besides conflict, and to show the U.S. that Beijing has its own ways of influencing the island with or without Washington's approval.
And here's the crucial point. As American military resources and, frankly, its attention get stretched thinner and thinner by the conflict with Iran, the strategic math in Washington starts to change. Taiwan security, which was once seen as this ironclad promise, starts to look a lot more like a negotiable asset. Something that could potentially be traded for a win somewhere else.
And this right here, this is the end game. This is where all three tiers, the Middle East War, the tech chokehold, and the Taiwan Gambit, all come together. See, they aren't separate problems to be solved. They are bargaining chips, created specifically for the upcoming Trump-Xi summit.
And this just lays it all out so clearly. You can see how this works, right? Each crisis is a chip on the table. China can say, hey, we'll help you calm things down with Iran. In return, the U.S. can say, okay, your oil tankers are safe from the blockade. China can ease up on the rare earth controls, and the U.S. can roll back some of the chip restrictions. Everything is connected.
So what's the big takeaway here?
Well, the source suggests we're in a new and pretty unsettling phase of global politics. It's calling it an era of quasi-war bargaining, where a conflict that's managed and sustained is no longer a failure of diplomacy. It is the diplomacy.
And really, it all comes down to this one moment. This summit will decide if all these manufactured crises can be traded away for a new kind of global stability, a grand bargain. But if that bargain fails, these three separate conflicts could very easily merge into one single global confrontation. The stakes just could not be any higher.